Okay, I'd like to call the Budget Review Committee to order. It's June 17th, 2021. It's 7 p.m. and we're in the Aldermatic Chamber with additional capabilities on Zoom. If you're joining on Zoom, the meeting ID is 830-7412-9111, and the passcode is 275258. If you're joining by telephone, it's 1-929-205-6099, and the meeting ID is 830-741-29111. Passcode is 275258. If there are any problems with the public connecting, please call 603-589-3329. So first order of business will be the roll call. Alderman O'Brien.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Alderman Ernest Jetty. Alderman Jan Schmidt.
I am here in the chamber.
Alderwoman-at-Large Shoshanna Kelly.
Here, I'm alone and I can hear everyone.
And you're on Zoom, correct? Yes. Alderman-at-Large Michael O'Brien is present, and I'm in the chamber. Alderman-at-Large Laurie Wilshire.
I'm here in the chamber.
And our chairman, Alderman Richard A. Dowd.
Yes, I am present and I'm in the chamber.
Mr. Chairman, we have 5 members present. Also in attendance are Alderman Lowe, and via Zoom, Alderman Lowe, who is present in the chamber, and Alderman Lopez, who is present via Zoom. Also in attendance, we welcome Police Chief Michael Carignan, Deputy Police Chief James Testaverde, Karen Smith, Business Manager, and Deputy Police Chief Rourke.
Alderman Jetty.
Oh, welcome Alderman Jetty.
I'm here, and I'm in the chamber.
Thank you.
Okay. Very good. Okay, first item of business is public comment. Is there anyone from the public that would like to make any comments on the item on the agenda this evening? Seeing no one, we'll move on. Communications.
From David G. Fredette, Treasurer, Tax Collector, regarding SURF, page 359, update of the blue sheet.
Okay, thank you. Unfinished business.
And there are none.
New business resolutions.
There is none.
New business ordinances.
There are none.
Tabled in committee.
Mr. Chairman, I would like to make a motion to take from the table R-21-142, which is relative to the adoption of the fiscal year 2022 proposed budget for the City of Nashua General, Enterprise, and Special Revenue Funds. A public hearing is scheduled for June 21st, 2021 at 7 p.m. in the Nashua High School North Auditorium, and I would like this vote by roll call.
Please call the roll.
Alderman Schmidt,
Yes.
Alderman Jetty,
Yes.
Alderman Wilshire,
Yes.
Alderman O'Brien votes yes, Alderwoman Kelly,
Yes.
and Alderman Dowd.
Yes.
Mr. Chairman, you have 6 yeas, 0 nays.
Okay, and we now have the budget R-21-142 back on the table. This evening, we're going to be discussing our last department, and that will be under Public Safety, Department 150, Police Department. Revenues are on page 36 and 300. Appropriations are on page 142. Who would like to commence?
Mr. Chairman, if I may, I'm going to share the screen right now with Deputy Chief Testaverde.
Okay, did somebody want to open up before that, or how are you gonna?
I would like to begin with the presentation, if that's okay.
Okay. Remember to bring your microphones real close or lean into them because they're very directional.
Thank you
Deputy?
very much. Chief Michael Carrigan speaking. Thank you very much for the opportunity to speak to you tonight and make this presentation. I'd like to talk, obviously, tonight about our fiscal year '22 budget, and I'd like to go through, in developing this budget, we had some significant challenges that we wanted to make sure you understood that we'd be facing in the next year. First and foremost, I'd like to talk about the upcoming influx of methamphetamines. Some of you have heard me speak. Over the past several months, the state has seen a much greater increase of methamphetamines coming into the state of New Hampshire. It's significant enough of a problem that we have met at a state level with the federal, state, and local law enforcement in an attempt to develop a strategic plan to overcome the dangers of crystal meth. For those of you who don't know, crystal meth is very different than the opioid crisis we've faced, and it's coming to New Hampshire. The supply chains are already there, the supply lines are already there. The mechanism to get the drugs into the city is established, as it was with the opioid abuse. Crystal meth, unlike opioids, is a stimulant. Opioids are a depressant, and they require much different treatments. There is very limited effective treatments for methamphetamine misuse. One of the things I want to make very clear to you all that we had to consider is methamphetamine, I'll back up. When you think about opioid abuse as a depressant, typically we see crimes associated with that are burglaries, theft, identity theft, burglaries breaking into a house to steal stuff to supply the habits. Crystal meth, I would classify as a violent drug. With crystal meth comes assaults, homicides, guns, aggressive behavior. We had a police officer this summer, was in a 9-minute battle for his life down at a hotel in southern Nashville. This battle included the subject who was high on crystal meth, took the officer's baton, took the officer's pepper spray, tried to take the officer's gun. He came at the officer with a sharpened, serrated piece of industrial plastic that could have stabbed and killed the officer. This is a dangerous drug. It's happening all over the state, and it's going to be coming to Nashville. So it's something that you all need to be put on notice for, that we need to be on top of this problem, and we need to really deal with it. The second item has been recruitment and retention. We've been talking about that a lot over the past several years. As you know, this dates back pretty much to when Alderman McCarthy was still here, talking about us getting up to full complement of officers. As you know, we are authorized through the budget for 179 officers, and it's always been a challenge to get to that level. We've always had to budget through attrition, limiting the ability to always get people on board and get them up and running. As you know, officers don't just come in and start day one as police officers. They go through an extensive background and an extensive training period. It takes a year to a year and a half from the time we find out they're interested to becoming a police officer to the time that we can get them out on the street. That poses significant challenges when you're trying to find new people and get them on board and getting them up and running while maintaining a budget through the year and keep safe, officers on the street, keeping everybody safe. With that recruitment and retention is also the desire to make our police force as diverse as possible. It has been our goal to get a police force that is more reflective of the population of Nashua. We have a very diverse community. We now have a very diverse police department. The last year, we've hired over 22 police officers, and those have been the most diverse we've ever hired at the Nashua Police Department. So it's exciting for us. We've been very successful. We've had different strategies to try, but it's still very difficult because, as you know right now, being a police officer is not the most admired profession. We have significant challenges in the media, in the press, in the public, on Facebook. So it's a very challenging time. And for people of this generation to necessarily want to work weekends and holidays at 3 o'clock in the morning under that scrutiny is a very, very tall ask. But we've been very successful. We were at full staff, which is something that has only been accomplished once in my experience here with the police department. So we've been very lucky. One of the third challenges we're striving for this year, we've been working for the past 6 months to establish the Nashua Police Department as a culturally effective organization. Given the fact that our police department is very diverse, given the fact that our community in Nashua is very diverse, it's important for us to strive to become a culturally effective organization. And what that basically means is we need to be available to the public. We need to make sure that every person in the public has access to resources and feels comfortable to coming to the National Police Department to use those resources to help them get through their needs as a victim of a crime, as a victim of an assault, or any number of reasons that they would come to the police department. Becoming a culturally effective organization has a lot of different components to it. We've developed a group within the department that includes all ranks and all diversified people within. There's a leadership component, a component that deals with the policies and procedures, components that deal with data collection and analysis, community engagement, language and communication access plans, staff cultural competence, and workforce diversity inclusion. Those are all different components that we need to strive for to make sure that we are able to provide all services to the people of Nashua in a safe and effective way. I think it's a goal worth achieving, and we've been about 6 months into this process, and it's something will continue to do in 2022, but it does have some budgetary challenges for us. Fourth and most important, motor vehicle enforcement. I think I've been on the phone with each of you as aldermen, and you've been on the phone with many, many of your constituents and have dealt with the speeding motor vehicles. During the recent pandemic, we saw a lot of motor vehicle traffic slow down, kind of go by the wayside. We didn't see as much traffic out there. People started speeding. Now that restrictions are limited, people are getting back out. We're starting to see those same people still speeding, just more of them. You guys get the complaints, we get the complaints. We've worked very hard to increase our motor vehicle enforcement, our motor vehicle visibility of the enforcement, and the strategies we use to get particularly speeders, but erratic drivers as well. We've had some success. We're going to continue to do it. Those successes include using stealth equipment, using uniform high visibility presence, using outside agencies to partnership to get some of those motor vehicle enforcement numbers up. So those are all different challenges we faced when we were putting together this budget for 2022. And I just wanted you to be aware of some of the thinking that went into what we had to accomplish for next year and some of the decisions we were looking at facing. For our initial budget proposal, Mayor Donchis initially requested a 0% increase to the NPD FY22 budget. That would NPD requires an increase of 2.59% to meet all the budgetary needs, including the signed collective bargaining agreements. We were obligated to meet a level without adding any additional items to our department to cover our costs that were existing under agreement at 2.59%. If we came in at this level, we would be looking at a budget cut of $703,000. To give you a little breakdown of our budget, as many of you know, we have our $35 million budget is 95% payroll and benefits. There is very little we can do because of contract obligations with the payroll and benefits except lay people off. The other 5% of our budget is operations. That's keeping the lights on, that's keeping the gas, keeping guys' uniforms on. That is the non-grant equipment that we have. It is our training. All those things make up our operations budget. It is a very small percentage compared to what the rest of the budget is. So when we were looking at how we were going to develop a loss of $703,000 without being able to hit anything in operations, which was predominantly level funded, there was one piece of computer equipment that needed to be replaced due to the technology that we use and the technology that's been helpful in our crime enforcement. There was a very limited options elsewhere. We were given guidelines on gas, electricity, and HVAC, or gas, electricity, and water bills. So for us, it was come down to, okay, if we are given this 0% increase, which we've always said we will come in with whatever we're given, we will manage that budget, it would resulted in approximately the layoff of 10 officers. Now, these 10 officers are 10 of the most diverse officers, like you just heard me speak, that we've ever recruited. If we were to lay off 10 people, the reputation of the National Police Department would spiral downhill. And by that, I mean people looking for employment. They're looking for secure jobs. They're looking from other agencies to come to work for Nashua. We just had a recent female come from an agency, a respected agency in the state. They wanted to come to work for Nashua. We would lose those officers immediately, and we would also lose the desire to want to come here. It would make recruiting that much more difficult for us over a period of time. Another result of laying off 10 officers would be a loss of services to the city of Nashua. Some of those services, we still have to keep police officers on the street. We still have to answer calls for service. We still have to make sure people are safe out there. So some of the services that we would have to be to make cuts to would be things like your National Pal officer, would be your school resource officers, they'd be your code enforcement officer, they would be your grant writing officer. All these positions that bring value to the police department would be the ones that we would have to eliminate. A lot of the community groups that we spend so much time really working with to gain trust and earn respect amongst each other would not be as possible because of not having the officers available to be there because of the loss. The other thing, when you start to take away 10 police officers and still having to fill those roles on the street, officers get tired. It's a stressful job. Shift work is very difficult. It's a demanding job. When you start to order police officers in to cover the gaps in the street, they start to get sick more often. They start to get injured. Those positions still have to be filled. So now we're paying more overtime to keep those officers on the street, which in the long run costs us a lot more money than it would just to hire these officers and be at full complement. So those were some of the risks that we faced if we had to come up with a $703,000 shortfall. Following that budget meeting with the mayor, he then proposed a 1.7% increase for the FY22 budget. This was great. It was wonderful for us. We would take it, but it still resulted in a shortfall of about $241,000 for us. This could result in the loss of approximately 4 sworn officers if there is no other alternative but to maintain the proposed budget. Again, the 4 officers, are they as bad as 10? Nope. But you still have the long-term repercussions of making that decision and making those cuts. So we have a proposed solution, which I'm going to bring to you tonight. One of our vehicles scheduled for the replacement on our SURF table is our mobile command vehicle. During our SURF meeting with the mayor, he had asked if this vehicle could be deferred for 1 year. We took a good hard look at the vehicle. We went through it. And we realized the projected replacement cost of this is about $500,000. So for those of you who don't know, the mobile command it looks like a big Winnebago. It runs any major incident that we have on the street, all SWAT callouts, that mobile command goes, and they're able to dispatch directly on scene. They're able to maintain control of the area and deal with that situation specifically. If there was something catastrophic were to happen at the Nashua Police Department, that vehicle can act as a dispatch center, which would result in no loss of service to the people of Nashua. We would be able to command from that vehicle through dispatch. After the mayor had requested that we go through and really see if we could dial in that vehicle, our fleet maintenance advised that the vehicle could keep running for another year. We could defer it. Now, I want to make sure you understand that we could defer it. The vehicle would still drive from point A to point B, but it's still a very, very old, antiquated system inside. So just because the vehicle will run doesn't mean the technology inside is up to speed to what we need to do. So I think it's important that you remember that we could defer it for a year. It would save a considerable amount of money, which takes the burden off of you for what our budget crisis is this year and allows us still to keep in mind that it's important to be made next year. And as I stated, some of the events that this come, the 4th of July, the holiday stroll, those are major events with 30,000 people or even 10,000, 30,000 people that come to the city of Nashua. And those are major incidents and we have to keep them safe. And that vehicle is a big part of that. So what we're asking to do is for you to allow us to defer the mobile command vehicle for 1 year. This would make us whole. The National Police Department would be whole with our fiscal year 22 budget. It would add the requested $100,000 to the Equitable Transfer Fund, which, as you all know, is that fund that, as Alderwoman Wilshire says it best, it's our snow fund. We can't predict when the snowstorm's going to come. We have to have money set aside if it's a bad year or a good year. This ETF fund is there if we have major incidents, such as a homicide or missing persons that take up a lot of resources. We can't budget for that over the course of the year. So we've had that fund for the last several years and have been able to tap into it as needed only. It doesn't get spent through all year, but it's critical for us to maintain that fund. So this deferment of the mobile command vehicle for 1 year would allow us to make ourselves whole, put that $100,000 into our ETF fund, and still have a savings to the city of over $150,000, which would allow you to offset some of the other costs that some of the other divisions are struggling with. So this doesn't cost any personnel loss to the National Police Department. It allows us to keep all the officers, still strive for that full complement of police officers to keep services at 100% to what they are today. I can imagine there'll be some questions. I wanted to thank you for listening to the presentation, and we're here to answer any questions you may have about that. Thank you.
Okay. Typically what we do is we go through the revenues and the appropriations and ask questions there, and then if we have additional questions. So your revenues on 300, they're just an offset. So there's, the money's coming in offset the money's being spent. So that's a wash, unless somebody has questions on page 300. On page 36, is there anyone that has any questions on the police revenue? Alderwoman Lou, did you have a question?
I was scratching my eye.
Oh, okay.
I do have a question, but
Just on
not
revenue?
on the, pardon me?
On revenues?
On page 36,
Yeah, you can ask her.
okay,
Okay.
thank you. The question is, other reimbursements, what are those?
Could you
Are
bring
the-
your microphone closer?
What are other reimbursements? Are those, sorry,
Are you referring to the?
grants? Sorry. Go on, I'm sorry.
Chief Mike Kerrigan, are you referring to the 699 accounts, the other reimbursements?
Yes, 45699.
Okay, so that is going to be the, as you may recall, we were able to hire an additional part-time attorney to manage the increased workload after the COVID-19 court shutdown. That revenue is from the Hollis Police Department providing us with 2/3 of the salary of that
Oh,
attorney,
yeah.
because that attorney is splitting between Hollis and Nashua. So that is what that income is coming in from Hollis PD.
Thank you.
Any additional questions, Alderman Lou?
Only other okay. Just the alarm system fines. I'm just curious, how do you generate revenue from an alarm system fine?
Chief?
Mike Kerrigan speaking. So when we respond, sometimes businesses have alarms that go off. There could be, I'll give you an example of Home Depot. Birds fly in there at night, and they get in and they fly around at night and they set the alarm off. And when that goes, or a house may have a faulty alarm. If we respond there night after night and the homeowner or the business owner doesn't get that issue fixed, it's an expense to us, so they start to get a fine for that. And sometimes if it's an ongoing problem and they're trying to fix it but are not able to, we're very respectful and we'll try to work with them to make sure that, more importantly, they get the issue fixed.
Thank you, I was just curious, thanks.
You're welcome.
I'm all set.
Okay. Any other questions on revenue? Alderman Jettie?
Yeah, Chief, I know that we have a lot of sophisticated equipment in Nashua, much more than the surrounding towns or even other cities. We're probably I'm not sure, but I think we're probably the best equipped department in the state. And I know that we're called upon to bring those specialized units to other places. I can't think of what they are, but the bomb unit, and there's a SWAT vehicle that we sometimes are called upon to go to other towns. When we do that, we're using our equipment, our people, we're sometimes paying overtime. Do we get reimbursed at all for that?
We don't, and we've spoken about this many times over the past several years. We presented the same question last year. There are a couple reasons we do not. Number one, I believe it's our responsibility as good neighbors to make sure we assist the agencies that are surrounding Nashua. If they need help, we're going to help them. We're law enforcement, they're law enforcement. There's a crime issue, we're going to respond and we're going to help them. But more importantly, a good majority of those toys, for lack of a better term, of what we have, your mobile command vehicle, or your bomb truck, your bomb equipment, the computer forensics unit. A lot of those items are given to us from the Secret Service, the FBI, or different organizations. They're giving them to us for free. And part of the expectation of that free software and that free computers and that free equipment is that we will help. We'll be a regional team. We bring the expertise out and solve the problem. That benefits the city and citizens of Nashville because we are best equipped. We're able to respond immediately to those calls because we have the equipment. We don't have to wait for hours for a unit to mobilize and come help us. We are able to do it immediately. The equipment is up to date. The training is up to date. Nashville has a group of police officers that are trained in such a diverse set of skills, and we're able to do that at almost no cost to the city of Nashville because all that equipment is free. We've been using our computer forensics unit extensively over the past probably 2 years. We're becoming one of the best units in the state. We're asked to travel to different areas. All that computer equipment that we have to get all these predators and to get all the people that are what we call travelers to have sexual relationships with minor children, we're able to capture them through equipment that was given to us from the Secret Service, equipment and training. So if you look at the pros and cons, the pros outweigh the cons by an extensive number, and it allows us to be well equipped.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Also, Chief, if we had an event here in Nashua that was large, we could possibly get assistance from the state police and maybe Manchester, other
There has
departments.
been, yes, Mike Kerrigan, there's been very number of occasions where we've been in a prolonged SWAT engagement or prolonged activity, and our officers and the resources are depleted. So Manchester will come down, state police will come down, so other agencies will come down and help us, and they'll spend a considerable amount of resources in our area, and they don't charge us.
Okay, thanks. Any additional questions on revenue? Alderman O'Brien?
Well, it's not so much a question. Excuse me, Jeff, or Jim in the control room, on the main screen, we're seeing the chat feature. So I wonder if you can eliminate that, if you could, please. Thank you.
The long voice.
Yeah.
Okay, we'll go into appropriations, which are on page one, starting on 146, and they're actually on 150. Are there anything specific that you, before we open it up for questions on appropriations, that you want to cover that either increases or decreases that might warrant an explanation?
I believe it's page 142, is that the page, sir?
Well, 150 is where they,
That's the department, but the
150 is
appropriations
fire.
are on 142.
Clarify in a minute. 142.
Yeah,
oh, I'm sorry,
He said
I'm on,
150.
wrong page.
Tell him.
Yep, yep.
42?
Flipped over too far. All right. Anything that sticks out that you want to explain, or you just want to open up to questions?
No, I'll open it up to questions.
Okay. Are there questions on the appropriations page? Alderman Jettie?
So, the replacement of this mobile unit, is that in here, or is that in, the replacement of the mobile unit and other vehicles, coming out of SURF? That's in a separate part of the budget, isn't?
Correct.
It's not in the
It's-
appropriations, right?
Correct.
And so when you spoke earlier about your willingness to defer the acquisition of a new mobile unit, and I can't remember how much you said that would be, what the mobile unit cost was it 400?
It's almost $500,000.
Okay. And, but, forgive me for, I want to make sure I was clear as to what you were saying. You said that you'd be willing to defer that, so we wouldn't, I'm assuming we wouldn't be spending the 500,000 all at once. This must be, or would we? Was it the plan to buy that unit with cash, or was that gonna be a bond amount, or do you know?
I had a discussion with John Griffin today. If they did it on this year's surf schedule, that amount of money would come out of the surf reserve fund entirely in cash. It's not slated to be bonded yet, but one thing, if we deferred it a year, we might also consider bonding it, in which case it would not take that money out of the surf account. But if we get to that point in the wrap-up, John Griffin will be here and we can discuss it.
Okay. May I continue?
Continue.
So, but your bottom line was that, you'd be willing to defer the acquisition of that, which would save, which would put off, I suppose that'd be a better way of saying it, would put off spending $500,000 on this mobile command unit. But you said that you would be able to reduce your budget by a much smaller number. I can't remember what number you said, but it struck me it was a much smaller number.
So
Can you
just so,
explain that?
Mike Kerrigan, just if I understand what you're saying correctly, and please correct me if I'm misunderstanding it. The initial proposal to come out of the zero from the mayor would result in a $703,000 loss. The mayor came back and was able to find some more money to give to us, which then resulted in a lower number of $241,000. That $241,000, if we were forced to deal with that, the only place we could come with that would be through the layoff of police officers. What we're asking to do is allow us to defer that vehicle for 1 year, take the funds saved from that, which is $500,000, make up the $242,000, put the $100,000 into the expendable trust fund, which means if we have a homicide or if we have a significant case, such as a prolonged standoff, we have money to deal with it, and it doesn't have to be budgeted out at the beginning of the cycle. And that would result in approximately, and I'm giving you rough numbers, $150,000 left over that you would be able to reallocate to some other shortfalls in the city.
Okay, thank you.
Just
May I?
one additional thing, that money, if we put it into that expendable trust fund, stays there. If they didn't spend it in '23, it would stay there. And we could possibly, in future years, add a little to it, build it up. The alternative is if they have a major case and we haven't put money in that trust fund, we'll be back here taking money out of contingency during the year to fund it, because that's the only thing we could do.
Okay.
Okay?
Could I follow up?
Yes, follow up?
I just want to understand, and forgive me if it's taken me a while to completely understand what you're saying. See, you're saying that if you deferred the purchase of this vehicle, this $500,000 vehicle, it's $500,000, you would then use, you would want your proposed budget, so you would want the mayor to give you back the $240,000, the mayor, us to give you back the $240,000. But in addition to that, you want $100,000 on top of that for this special overtime trust fund. That special overtime trust fund is not in your budget now?
That's correct. It was specifically, and correct me if I'm wrong, Karen, it was specifically kept out of our budget because they wanted it to be a fund available as a, and they had a special word for it, and forgive me, I don't recall what it was, but they wanted it to be a separate, isolated account used specifically for high-incident cases. So when we need that money, we have to do a request to transfer the money in and justify the reasons why. And as you may recall, when you were on as our liaison, we would report every month in the event that we needed to take that money into what that was.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome, thank you.
Yeah, just a little follow-up. In order for them to spend out of that trust, they'll have to come back and ask us, but the money would be there. We wouldn't have to take money out of contingency, assuming we had it in contingency. And, you know, they could continue with their investigation, but it does take action to take it out of any trust fund.
Sharon,
Yes,
if I take a minute to elaborate on the.
could you just name for the stenographer, she won't know who's
Yes,
speaking.
Karen Smith, business manager. I'll just give a quick highlight on the overtime itself and the establishment of the account. Years ago, we used to return a significant amount of money from our overtime account, 500,000, 600,000, that kind of dollar amount. And it was because we were budgeted appropriately for our overtime. But at the time, we had vacancies in our operating payroll accounts because we didn't fill the positions. So it was normal funding for full-time, normal funding for our overtime accounts. The change was made so that we would pay for the payroll from the overtime from the surplus in the payroll for vacancies. So the times have changed and we are able to be full staffed and you don't have that kind of surplus anymore. So right now you have 1.2 as our overtime account. That averages around 23,000 a week. Our overtime is $2 million year to date, which is more like 39,000 a week. So there's an understanding at the time when they created that snow account, if you will, similar to a snow account, which means if it snows out, you need to be able to plow the streets. And it's no different than if there's a major incident, or homicide, whatever the major incident is, we need to make sure that we can go to that account and have the money to pay for the incident and not have a budget where I have to make sure that I have 100,000 set aside, which means I would have to take that 23,000, remove 4,000 a week and lower the weekly average amount in order to figure out how much I can afford for overtime and reduce services because of that lower amount. So that's how the account was established. Not necessarily the amount we need, but it was a starting point of let's put some amount away so that if we have a major something that happens, I'm able to, for only major incidents, ask them for reimbursement, if you will, for those types of incidents. So now we are at a turning point because recruitment has changed over the past 2 or 3 years. They have achieved it more than once. The overtime that I have to figure out now is what number is the right number. It's not the 1.2 that we're currently at. It's not 2 million either. That is definitely going to be higher, but it is somewhere in between. And until we change the way we do our budgets to some degree, we at least need to know that we have that 100,000 in the account for the major incidents. Thank
Okay,
you.
Thank you. All set, Alderman Jenny?
I'm all set on that point, but I have others, but I'll wait if other people have questions.
Okay, I have Alderman O'Brien and Alderman Lopez in the queue.
I'll concede to Alderman Lopez, thank you.
Alderman Lopez, did you have a question?
Well, so specific to what was just commented on, I think we should probably be looking at making sure that contingency funding and special situations are being prepared for, because we struggled with the opioid crisis, which is a sedative. And if we're looking at methamphetamines, then that is a stimulant. In my experience, at least as a social worker, those cases are complex. Their behaviors are a little bit more involved. And I think our police department is already starting to see more aggressive responses to police intervention when it comes to, investigating domestic violence incidents in the home or that type of thing. We're already starting to see some demonstrations and outbursts as people come out of COVID-19. So we really should take this seriously and make sure we have that contingency funding. My question was for the pension fund, number 52150. It's up $1.5 million. Is that passed down from the state? Is that what we've been hearing about?
Karen?
Karen Smith. The information in that category is supplied by finance, but I do know that the rates for July 1 have gone up.
You know,
Okay.
all the pension and benefits accounts, that number is put in this book by John Griffin. So they just see it, they don't calculate it. And yes, the pensions are up on all departments.
Okay, I just wanted to make sure that I understood why that raise was. Thank you.
Except DPW. Do you have a question, Alderman Moran?
No, I'm all set
All
for now,
set?
thank you.
Alderman Jettie, another question?
Yes, Chief, you said that in your explanation, I know you've come up with what I think seems to be a solution, and I thank you very much for finding that. But when you said that to meet the mayor's initial reduction of 703,000, you would have to lay off 10 people. How did you come up with that number? It seems, when I divide 703 by 10, you know, that's like 70,000. It doesn't seem like I think your police officers cost more than 70 when you think, you know, their salaries and their benefits and everything else. It must be a lot higher than that. Why did you come up with 10 to achieve that savings?
Well, first of all, it's not, Mike Kerrigan, it is not, 10 is not a hard number. Like I said, it was kind of speculated that it would be 10 officers, 4 officers. We took, I believe it was the senior patrolman rate, or the master patrolman rate?
Certified.
Oh, certified, okay, so there'd be a patrolman? Okay, so we took the rate of a patrolman, which is $74,000, which would be the equivalent of a certified 2 coming into the police department to work,
That's holiday.
and plus their holiday. So that's how we came up with that number.
Additional question?
May I continue? But are you including benefits in that?
Karen Smith, no, we were not including benefits at the time of the calculation. The benefits was not in the percent increase formula. So certainly you could always add benefits in the formula too.
I'm just trying to, when you say that you would lay off 10 people, and I know it's not a hard number, it seems like 703,000 would equate to laying off fewer people than 10, but I, you know.
Usually when they look at our increase, our benefits are removed from our calculation. So that's why we didn't use the benefits.
Okay, but if you laid off a person, you wouldn't be paying their salary and you wouldn't be paying their benefits either, right?
Yes, I'm talking about when they look at our percent increase change, usually we take the whole benefits out of the calculation. The pension, the Medi, benefits is also usually removed from the percent change calculation. That's why I didn't include it.
Okay.
Okay.
And on that same note, if the 70 or so $1,000 is what you used, wouldn't the 241 be less than 4 people? Wouldn't that, you'd have to lay off to meet that?
Well, no, like Mike Kerrigan, like
Yes.
Ms. Smith just said, we don't have access to those, and those are removed from that bottom line. So for the same reasoning, we figure about 4, the same as for 10, depending on the price, because those figures are removed, and we don't have access to those when we're making our calculations.
Okay, but you have access to them now, right? They're in the book.
And I'll let Karen speak to it, but when we factor in those percentage cuts, the benefits are not factored into that number. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm.
So if you factored in those, then you add those to the bottom line, so you're making a scalable adjustment up, if that makes sense. Yeah, go ahead.
Mr. Chair, may I?
Yes, go ahead.
Jim Testaverde, Deputy Chief National Police. And Ms. Smith also mentioned before that we're factoring in at a certified 2 rate. So when we hired an officer from San Francisco that had 3 to 4 years experience, he was hired at a higher wage. We don't know the exact candidates we're going to get until the hiring process is complete. So if we hire someone that was, just like I was when I started, that had no law enforcement experience, the difference in pay is roughly $20,000. So it could be 4 or 5 people at that $20,000 difference, or it could be people at a much higher rate. We don't, that's why it's just an approximate. We don't know who these candidates are gonna be as they come through the door. And budgeting on a daily basis, the captain that's in charge of recruiting will run over to Karen's office almost on a daily basis to say, we have a candidate, this is a brand-new candidate that will come in at this rate if he or she passes everything. We have another candidate that's coming in as a certified rate, so she has to factor that $20,000 difference in initial pay. I understand what you're saying about the benefits, but this is also a part of the reason why it is an
I don't know if
approximation.
they are using it or not,
Thank you.
so I'd have to look at it.
Alderman Jettie, you're all set?
I am, thank you.
I actually had Shoshana Kelly on, and then Alderman Lou. Alderman
Thank you.
Kelly?
Thank you, Alderman Dowd, and thank you for being here, Chief, and the rest of the staff. I appreciated your presentation. I did have a number of questions. So one of the things you said at the top of the hour was that our police department is more diverse than it ever has been, but that there were budgetary constraints that could potentially change that. Was that in reference to potentially having to get in, last man in kind of mentality, or are there other pressures that keep you from continuing to build on that?
Sure, that's a great question. This is Mike Kerrigan. That last in, first out is what we have to go by contractually. So we've been lucky to kind of change the way we recruit and be able to bring in diverse officers, particularly over this past year. Unfortunately, those are the first officers that would have to go. So that would be, that would significantly impact that diversity that we've been lucky to hire.
And if I could follow up.
Follow up, Alderman Kelly?
Yeah, thanks for that answer. Are there other things that you're doing around diversity that changing the budget or meeting the mayor's budget will make you have to scale back?
I'm sorry, could you repeat that question? You came in broken briefly.
I'm sorry. Thanks for bearing with me in the technology. I just asked if there were other things beyond just the physical officers around diversity that you're doing that would be scaled back if your budget was cut.
Sure. Well, we would have to, take a look, like I said in my presentation, with the loss of officers and still having the need to cover calls for service on the street, some of the community conversations or the community involvement we have would have to be scaled back because we would not be able to have the manpower to attend those meetings or organize those events or participate at the level that we've been doing for the past 6 years. SROs have started having community conversations within the schools with the students, particularly minority groups, and that would also have a significant impact on our ability to do that. So those are some of the services that we do that we think are important, and based on my conversations with all of the aldermen and women, we believe it's important to have those conversations, and with a scaled-back workforce, we may not be able to meet all those needs all the time.
Okay, thank you. If I could I have a few more questions, but I can yield if there are other people.
I'll come back to you. Alderwoman Lou?
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Through you to Chief Kerrigan, I'm assuming you don't have the SURF replacement. Maybe the chairman, the committee chairman can confirm, is what we're going to delay the $495,000 Freightliner MT-55 van?
That's correct.
Okay, all right. So, I just want to understand, when you said that you don't include the benefits, I just want to understand this for the whole budget process. When the mayor asks for a certain percentage maximum increase, he's not holding you, all of the departments try to do that or are measured on how closely they stick to that minus the fringe benefits? Is that what we're saying here? Or is it just the police department that does it this way?
Karen Smith.
Karen?
I want to make a correction on that because I am looking at page 9, and the calculation excludes pension, FICA, and Medi. The health insurance is in there. So I do want to go back and look at that. And at the time that I had done the workup was prior to the knowledge that I had that the benefits were being rolled into that, and that's how we came to the 2.59. So I will go back and recalculate and add the health part into it. Does that answer your question?
It probably answers his better.
Okay.
Alderman Jetty's better, but my main question was, is that other than the health insurance, all of the departments, their target increase is calculated not, and it does not include those 3 items in fringe benefits?
I can answer that because it's on all departments are on the same report on that page.
Okay.
Yes.
All right, thank you. And the only other question I had was, it looks like firearms have gone up quite a bit, maybe 30%.
What
It's
account?
71407, last page under equipment. And wonder if you can provide any perspective on that?
Who wants to?
Those are the tasers, right?
It's under equipment on page 144 of our report.
Yep, Michael Carrigan, if I can answer that, that price includes an $8,000 increase for tasers. We have to replace our taser units, which are expensive, so that includes, that's why you see a significant jump in that number.
And we don't do that every year, is that correct?
Correct.
Okay, thank you. Actually, one other question, if I could follow up?
Certainly, follow on.
Just, looks like we're thinking that fuel will go down in price? Unleaded fuel?
We're given guidelines to, as to what to budget for fuel from the city. We don't
Okay.
have that estimate. Hopefully it will go down.
That's good news.
Right.
Okay, thank you. I'm all set.
Okay. Alderwoman Kelly, did you have a follow-up question?
I had multiple questions. Thank you. I actually had questions around, towards the end of your budget book, you go into quite detail about your capital improvements program. Is that hitting your line or is that coming out of something else? Are we bonding that? I couldn't quite put my fingers on how that was going to be funded.
Sure. Which are you referring, I'm sorry, Mike Carrigan, are you referring to a specific project? Alderwoman Kelly?
I'm referring to your overall proposed plan for capital improvements for 2020. It looks like there's a fence, some building work, and a few other, I'm sorry, I'm looking at it. So we have security fence, locker room, the parking lot repaving, and the renovation and addition.
I can address part of that. The major work that's going on at the police station, from the windows to the AC to the lockers, all that, that's all bonded. And the only thing in the budget is the part of the debt service for the overall bond program. It's not in their particular department's budget.
So Alderman Dowd, this FY 2022 has already been bonded and accounted for. This,
Yes.
we're looking at about 13 million.
Yes.
Okay. I had another question for the chief. So Chief, I know there was some discussion earlier in the year around potentially getting body cams. I didn't see that in there. Was that just a budgetary consideration?
There is an item in the budget, I believe it's going to be a.
It's under capital improvements.
And it is we are in the process of purchasing those right now. We're going through contract negotiations. The contract is being reviewed. Deputy Work has been working extensively on it. We hope to have those by year end.
Okay. My next question is around, this is a little bit more lofty here, but I noticed that your numbers in terms of crime and mental health calls, et cetera, in the last year were down. I'm assuming that is sort of deflated due to people being at home. Would you agree with that?
Absolutely. We've seen a very steep decrease in most calls for services due to the pandemic and the restrictions in place.
And so my follow-up would be, do you feel the budget that you have in front of you will allow you to continue to do the great work you do as, you know, people come back and potentially, I know that there's definitely a mental health crisis coming out of this pandemic. Do you feel equipped to do that, or are you concerned that there's going to be quite a wave of things coming up in the next year?
If you folks are kind enough to go through with the plan to allow us to maintain our budget, to be level funded and make sure that expendable trust is made whole, I think not only will we be able to maintain services, but part of the training and part of what we've been doing is developing a CIT program, which has our officers especially trained in mental health disorders and how to deal with people suffering from mental health issues on the street in a more effective way. So I think we've been doing bits and pieces of that. So I think you'll see in 2022 an even greater response to how we manage those increased calls for service. And by doing that training and by giving as many officers, we hope to be 25% trained in CIT principles, we will be able to minimize the damage by increased calls for service because of the way we're able to respond.
So follow up to that, thank you. You said you want to do 25. Can you get me a number of what it would cost to get the entire force that training?
I can't give you a cost right now because I'm not sure. We've been trying to go through with grants. We've been trying to host training so we can get free slots to get some of the officers in. I don't know what it would cost for our entire department, but I would be happy to follow up. One of our sergeants has been spearheading the program. I'd be happy to find out a per officer cost and what a backfill overtime cost would be for that to let you know.
Yeah, I'd definitely be interested in that, and I thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks.
All set?
Yes.
Okay. Alderman Jettie, did you have additional questions?
Well, since you asked. While we're here, I was wondering, does it happen when there are conflicts of interest that exist? I mean, this isn't so much budgetary, but I guess it could be. When there are conflicts of interest where you don't feel that your department is appropriate to do an investigation, where you refer it to the county attorney's office or the attorney general's office?
Yes.
Okay, and do you have to pay for that, or is?
It depends. If the Attorney General's office handles the investigation, they don't charge us, nor would the county attorney's office.
Okay, so when you say it depends, what did you mean?
So that if it's a law enforcement agency, like you had mentioned earlier, when we were not able to, we don't charge other agencies, they don't charge us. I guess they could send us a bill for work, but we don't anticipate that they would.
Okay, thank you.
All set?
Yes, thank you.
Are there any other questions for appropriations relative to the police department budget? Alderman Lou?
Thank you. I just missed these in the last round. What is the line requested appropriations? Is it the figure in the books, or has it been adjusted? And I understand, I heard that Mr. Fredette sent something, an updated page, but I don't recall seeing that.
Okay, that has to do with the SURF item, and we're going to address that afterwards.
Yep,
It's just replacing the page in the budget book
okay.
for a change in vehicle acquisition.
So I have a figure here in the book, 35,320,858. Is that the final number? Or are we talking about some reduced number?
Which page are you referring?
Wait a minute, police. Page 144, the appropriations?
So the 35,079,520 includes the mayoral reduction of 241,338. So if that were restored, you'd have to add the 241,338 to the 35,079,520.
Which would be the number you're talking about.
Okay,
Right?
thank you. And just two other questions. I noticed software maintenance is expected to increase considerably. Could you just shed some light on that?
Sure. Part of the way law enforcement is trending now, there's a lot of people with cameras. They have, Ring cameras, and they have cell phones, and they're always recording things on their cell phone devices, computer devices. So we have a lot of equipment that requires licensing, and that licensing requires annual fees for it. So in order to keep the tools up and running to the level we need to, we have to keep maintaining the licenses when we get the new product. Sometimes we will get those licenses free, like if we send somebody to the Secret Service school, they will give us computer equipment, and they'll also give us licensing for a year, so those numbers fluctuate. But because of the number of computers and technology that we're using on a day-to-day basis now to solve crime, that's kind of the cost of doing business for us.
Thank you.
You're
I'm all
welcome.
set.
All set? Alderman Jettie?
Yeah, just to clarify, following up on Alderman Lou's question, I want to make sure, I think I know what you said was that, if you're offering to put off purchasing that new $500,000 piece of equipment in exchange for the number that you had proposed of $35,320,858 plus an additional 100,000. So what you're asking us for is $35,420,858 if we deferred the purchase of the.
Well, the 100,000 wouldn't go into their budget. It goes into the expendable trust fund and not into their budget, and is ultimately controlled by the Board of Aldermen. They would come and ask us if they had a major case that we expect we're gonna need this much money to prosecute the case and investigate the case, and we would have to transfer the money from the expendable trust fund into their budget during the year. But it won't be in their budget.
So where would the 100,000 come from?
That would be determined by a motion that's made at the wrap-up. And it's, John Griffin will be explaining it. I talked to him today, so. And when we do the wrap-up session, it will take a motion by someone to make the change.
Okay, I think I understand, but the 100,000 is money that we'd be setting aside for this overtime account for the police department,
Yes,
correct?
we would be putting into an expendable trust fund that stays in that trust fund until they need it, and they have to come to us to ask for it, and we would appropriate it at that time.
And if I understood correctly, that's not there yet. That's not there now.
Not there now.
So this would be an additional 100,000 that we would have to budget for.
We would have to get it, take it from
In case they
somewhere.
needed it, right?
Right. There are a couple alternatives, and John Griffin will explain it all.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Anything else that you'd like to present?
Oh, I appreciate your time, everyone.
I will say that I think the city is a much safer place with the police department that we have, being well-trained. I noticed that some efforts in Congress are trying to give money to smaller departments to be able to afford to go through the accreditation that we go through. And I think that the general public needs to know that we're one of the highest ranking, if not the highest ranking, accredited police force in the country. Unless you think that's different, but, And, there are things going on every single day that normally come out to the general public, that they are protected by the efforts that you guys provide. And I personally just want to thank you all for your day-to-day activities, and it's not easy in any regard. Alderman Wilshire?
Thank you. I'd like to thank the department for coming in with a solution to the budget problem and bringing in a really good budget. Really appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you. We appreciate it.
Alderman Schmidt?
I also want to thank you for something. I'd called the chief about a little problem we have with speeders on Route 3. I had a couple of people complaining about how people cut to get in doing 80 or whatever. Thank you very much for working with the state. They made a big difference on that. Also, I've received calls, not of complaints of the police department, but thank yous. There are patrols on the streets where we see a lot of speeders, and it really makes a difference, and people are noticing. And so I'm extremely grateful that people are seeing that you're doing the work you are for us. Also, the CIT program sounds awesome. That would be amazing for your mental health as well as the folks that you're taking care of. Mutual aid is extremely important, and I'm very grateful that you help to take care of the whole community, not just our city. But aside from that, your visibility is making a difference for people. So thank you very much.
Thank you much, and that means a lot to the officers on the street as well. We appreciate it.
Take 2 seconds to jump into another role I have as chairman of the Joint Special School Building Committee. The Pennachuck site now is shut down, and I think they've talked to somebody at the department about doing a couple extra checks at night to make sure that nobody is, they've already had one incident where the trailers were broken into. It's all fenced off. There should be no one in there. It's a hard hat area, even during the day, other than construction people. So,
We'll definitely make sure we give it the special attention.
yeah. I have Alderman Alderman Lopez waving. Alderman Lopez,
We look alike.
Yep, so I just wanted to comment,
only on the top.
Only on the top.
that was a joke. But, I wanted to, express my appreciation to the police department for the work that they do. Some of it isn't always, quite so evident to the public, but, in terms of prevention, I know they work closely with a lot of the local nonprofits in order to, help manage, people struggling with homelessness, people struggling with, mental health issues. So there's a lot of, prevention that does happen on that level. And then, coordinating with, youth programs, additionally is valuable. I am looking forward to the police focus on traffic control. I know a lot of attention has been given to the Main Street traffic, but Palm Street, people definitely come bombing right down the Parkway, and they're basically being fired right into a neighborhood with daycares and elderly people, and there are a lot of concerned citizens in that area. I also know that they have been active and coordinating with the FBI regarding the recent white supremacy tags and stickers and that kind of thing. And that's an example of something we really don't want to see here in Nashua. And it's important that Nashua PD have that ability to have ambassadors in the community, such as the education programs and the nonprofits, to make sure that citizens are willing to come forward and report these kind of things, so the police will respond. I appreciate the job that you're doing on paper and the results that you get. I appreciate the crimes that you keep from cultivating, from allowing to be cultivated. And I think the body cams is going to be a great step for us in terms of a budgetary investment. It's always a difficult year, it seems like, when we have some kind of new progressive move, but I think a reasonable alternative in offsetting the implementation of the command center replacement is a pretty good solution. Also on that note, thank you for bringing the command center in advance. It's going to be at the Tree Streets block party, and that's another opportunity for the police to kind of show up and be a positive positive presence in the community in a non-law enforcement capacity. They're always helpful. I know at our last party in 2019, the bomb unit guys were the go-to for several nonprofits that had carnival games that weren't working or tables that weren't like staying up on their own. It was a way to show that those guys are really resourceful and they can make anything work out of anything. So I look forward to seeing that interaction, and I appreciate the chief's efforts to support those.
Thanks, Alderman Lopez. Alderwoman Kelly?
Thank you. I also wanted to express my gratitude to the police department. I know it has been an especially tough year for many of us, including you. I know that you have done some really great work, and I appreciate hearing about the cultural sensitivity training, as well as bringing in more diverse officers. I think that's going to really be an important piece of how our city, as the most diverse in New Hampshire, continues to have this ongoing conversation. I know I was impressed with the work that you did when we had the Black Lives Matter rally. You guys really, I was overwhelmed by how incredible you guys handled that. So I appreciate that. And all the other work you do, getting people to slow down on Main Street, or working on the drugs that are coming as influx. I know it's not an easy job, so thank you.
Anyone else? Seeing no one? Thank you very much for coming in. We appreciated having you here, and keep up the good work.
Appreciate you guys listening to us. Thank you.
Thank you, commissioners. Alderman O'Brien, do you have a motion?
Oh, of course I do. Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman. I would like to make the motion to table R-21-142, which is the pending budget, by roll call.
Please call the roll.
Alderman Schmidt,
Yes.
Alderman Jettie,
Yes.
Alderman Wilshire,
Yes.
Alderman O'Brien votes yes, Alderwoman Kelly,
Yes.
Alderman Dowd.
Yes.
Mr. Chairman, you have 6 yeas, 0 nays.
Okay, very good. Before we jump into anything else, Treasurer Fedette called me a few times relative to the his request to change on page 359 in your budget book. It has been changed to reflect an update. The change has no impact on the fiscal 22 budget or the applicable resolutions, since these funds come directly from the Surf Trust. The updated page is attached. Page 359, line 9, 1997 Harley Davidson will be replaced with a 2009 Chevy Impala with a current replacement cost of $43,238, which is a net increase of $16,940 needed from Surf. I'd entertain a motion to allow us to change page 359 in the budget book.
I'll make that motion.
Motion by Alderman Wilshire to change page 359 in the budget book in accordance with Treasurer Fedette's memo or letter to us. Alderman Wilshire? Alderman O'Brien?
Yeah, thank you. It's just a housekeeping item. If I may amend the motion to accept the changes on the blue sheet, and also to accept the communication and place it on file.
Yes. Okay. Are there any questions? Seeing none, would the clerk please call the roll?
Alderman Schmidt,
Yes.
Alderman Jettie,
Yes.
Alderman Wilshire,
Yes.
Alderman O'Brien votes yes, Alderwoman Kelly,
Yes.
Alderman Dowd.
Yes.
Mr. Chairman, you have 6 yeas, 0 nays.
Very good. Okay, motion carries. General discussion, Alderman Wilshire.
I think what we had before us tonight was very fortunate for this budget committee and for the city. The police department came in, they had a problem, they came in with a solution. I give them kudos for bringing in a resolution to their issue. I can't give them any more credit than that, but I really appreciate what they did and how they brought in their budget, so thanks to them.
Yeah, and anything that they were proposing, we'll have to work out the motions and work with, on the wrap-up sessions, we will have John Griffin here. And I'm having him, I talked to him today about presenting a spreadsheet that shows where we're at now with the revenues and the appropriations and what that means for a proposed tax rate. And if we make changes up or down, it'll automatically adjust that. So it'll be much easier to see if we make a motion. I'm not gonna give away any of the numbers because I don't wanna take away his, his thunder from his spreadsheet, but he'll be with us on all the wrap-up sessions. And we'll start those right after the public hearing on Monday. Alderman Wiltshire?
So this is our last budget review meeting, correct?
This is the last before department, yes.
Okay, thank you.
The meetings after that will be wrap-up, where members of the budget committee can make motions to make changes to the mayor's budget, and then we will send a recommendation to the full board and go from there. Alderman Jettie?
So, if I remember correctly, Monday is the public hearing
Yes,
at Nashua North
Nashua North,
at 7
7
p.m.
o'clock. No
then-
Zoom. They can't do it from there. No
No.
live TV.
No Zoom.
It's recorded.
No Zoom, they have to be present? to
Yep.
Say anything?
Yep.
Well, that's unfortunate.
No.
That's the way it's always been done.
I understand that, but, you know, I think the silver lining of this pandemic has been our discovery of Zoom and how useful a tool it is, and, you know, it does provide access. I'm sorry that I can't, that I can no longer participate by Zoom, because it certainly was convenient, and for the public, you know, it gives them a chance to, you know, participate without having to
Well,
get a babysitter or leave home or drive down here, whatever. So,
that's why all the city, including the aldermen, are gonna go through with hybrid when we have a full aldermatic meeting here. Is that really loud? Full aldermatic meeting here in this chamber, we are still gonna allow, as is the planning board, the zoning board, the ability for the public to zoom in. Well, we have the capability here. The public hearing is just too many, potentially too many people. I mean, just the department heads, which we usually have, are, I'm getting a lot of feedback on that, are too many people to have in this chamber. So it can't be done here. And, you know, unless somebody wants to call the governor and get that changed, no.
and
He's busy.
if I may.
Yes.
Mr. Chair. So, by the way, you're talking, and that capability doesn't exist at Nashua North.
No,
Not in the theater.
no. And they, I'm not sure whether they have live TV capabilities, but there's no Zoom and no call-in capability. I just reviewed that today with the people.
And so after the public hearing, did you say we're gonna go right into a wrap-up?
No.
That we,
Not Monday night.
It's the 20,
The
I
following,
think it's the 28th and 29th that we'll do the wrap-up.
the following week.
And then we intend having, I believe, a special Board of Alderman meeting on July 1st to
It's
pass the budget.
possible.
If it's not passed on July 1st, we go into a continuing resolution because we won't have a budget. And so it's different this year because of COVID. Also, when I review the budget at the public hearing, I'm going to go division by division, not department by department. There are too many departments to have nobody ever asks questions over the last 20 years that I've been involved. So we're just going to do it by division. You have a question on the division, come up. Okay?
Okay, thank you.
It was almost a tie. Alderman Lou?
Oh, was I first? Thank you. Could you just, how does SURF come into the budget process? Do we actually discuss that, or is that part of our vote? Or has it already been okayed?
No, SURF is a,
A hope?
SURF is a special account, is an expendable trust fund for SURF that money gets put into. Usually when we get into like August and we're doing the likes and the unlikes to, whatever it
yeah.
is. You know, we sometimes plug money into SURF to build it up. But all of the expenditures for the items that are listed right now in SURF, they're either spent out of the SURF expendable trust in cash, although I doubt they actually they call it cash, but, or it's bonded.
Right.
So it's not part of any of the other parts of the budget. It's separate.
Okay, so, but one way or the other, we would have directed money probably from residuals in the different accounts to the SURF account at the end of the budget process or
That's
in
up to
early
the mayor. The mayor
September.
usually gives us a list of things he wants to move things into, and we can agree or disagree or suggest other things. But that's later. Once the fiscal year ends, which is June 30th, and they clean up the books, which takes them at least the month of July, you know, to close everything out, then they will come in and there will be monies left over. And how that monies get spent comes out of the mayor's office.
Okay, thank you. And just, does anyone know what Shoshanna, what Alderman Kelly was looking at when she was looking at the capital improvements? I just didn't see them in this book.
Oh, the capital improvements are in the book. They're in the back.
I was referring specifically to the book that we got from the police that had their budget and their capital improvements and their goals and objectives. We were emailed it, Alderman Lowe.
See it?
I don't know if I
Was
put my
a
hand on it right away, but it's in
page
the,
document, you would
police-
probably have remembered it.
230 pages. And the capital improvements I was looking at was, I think they started on like 110.
Okay, thank you. Everything did go out to the full board, correct? Oh, okay.
yeah, the
It's probably just one of those things that got lost in my email. Thank
Capital-
you. Thank you.
capital improvements-
I'll
Alderman
forward
Kelly.
it to you now, Alderman Lowe.
Oh, thanks.
capital improvements that have been approved by the mayor for 22 are all in the book. And that's where the body cams are. There's 100K in deferred maintenance for the school department, there's 40K, I think it's 40, no, it's more than that.
Do you happen
Forget
to
how much
have
it
a
is.
page?
What? I can find it. Bear with me a second. Oops. If I looked in the index first, I could probably cut to it.
My
quicker.
recollection was there was a pink booklet that we got after the Capital Improvement Committee finished their work in the spring, and that had the capital
Yeah,
improvement
that
listings.
goes to the mayor, and he determines which ones are gonna be
Oh.
put in the budget.
I don't know, I'm looking.
It's page
For page.
275. If you go on page 275, you'll see what was spent in FY '21 and what's intended to be spent in FY '22. There's 50K for land use code update, $217,052 for Lock and Whitney Street sidewalk improvements, $183,050 for East Hollow Street and Bridge Street intercept improvements. Revenue share to hydroelectric operator at 10%, $104.
Right here, yeah.
Police body cameras, $350,000.
Is this the police?
And fire deferred maintenance, 50, school deferred maintenance, 100,000, and street infrastructure improvements, 75,000.
That's fire.
Page 275.
Thank you.
Improvements.
Yeah.
I don't think it's in the index, but thank you.
Alderman Dowd?
Yes, Alderwoman Kelly.
Thank you. So I'm looking at that page, and when we were talking about the 12 million for the police department, you had said it was under capital improvement. I don't see that here.
No.
Is it somewhere
No, we were talking about, bonded projects. I'm sorry, it's a the capital improvements It is, you get a book, some of the capital improvements, the really expensive ones are bonded. And they don't, the page that I just referred to is something that's coming out of this year's budget. Not bonded.
Okay.
All
So
right.
the ones on page 275 are general fund capital improvement projects.
Yes.
The other bonded ones are in a separate book.
The bonding is also in this book in another section. And it will show you it's the one that we went through with Treasurer Fedette. And it'll show all the things that are bonded in what year. And it also shows what is paid each year out of the budget to pay for the bonds. And we try to keep that number fairly constant across many years. It goes up and down a little, but it stays fairly constant. And the reason that it does, and the fact that we don't bond anywhere near what we could legally, that's why we have the AAA bond rating.
Okay, thank you.
I often accuse Treasurer Fedette of chasing a dime down a 12-lane highway against traffic. He's very frugal. Alderman Jettie?
Yeah, so just, I'm just thinking out loud here. I see the police body cameras, 350,000, that's on page 275.
Yep.
As a capital improvement. The command vehicle that they're willing to defer was on page
It's under the SURF account.
364.
359, right?
Yeah.
359.
Mm-hmm.
And that's under SURF replacements.
Yes. I've been asking for one for a long time. I'm hoping some night we'll have a complete discussion on SURF with the mayor and John Griffin. And the SURF goes out like 15, 20 years on all the vehicles when they'll be replaced. If SURF worked the way the concept is meant to be, is when we buy, like we just buying 2 new pumper trucks, which are being built right now. When those come and go in service, you would estimate that, say they last, I don't know, hypothetically 10 years. You'd take 1/10 of that cost and put it in the SURF fund every year, so that when you get to replace that truck, all that money would be there.
Right.
Pumper trucks and ladder trucks right now we're bonding because they were very expensive. And bonding is under 2%. So makes more sense for us to do it that way. But the SURF fund is not funded that way. It's just, we put money into it every year and we basically figure out what we're gonna buy and pay for it. Alderman O'Brien?
Yeah, if I can say, my years on the fire department and coming up and purchasing apparatus, and, for years we've dealt with the SURF account, and, but most unfortunately, keep in mind, we just came off of 25 years of a spending cap. And unfortunately, the SURF account was one of those accounts that was the lackey. When you have fixed spending and you have a spending cap, you look for ways to try to stay under the cap. And unfortunately, SURF was one of those accounts that never really was truly funded. But fortunately, by fate of the fiscal wizardry of the economy, bonding became a little bit better. And we're on the reaping end of it, and we're seeing that. But I agree with my partner here, Alderman Dowd. What happens if the bubble breaks or the balloon breaks or whatever, and we have to get back? And SURF has always been something that I think we had to neglect to continue our business. But as we march on in the future, keep in mind that, it's an account that definitely needs to be properly, funded. And where does it comes out? It comes out of the general fund. And if you have a cap, it's very hard to do that.
All set. So I'm hoping we'll have some night we'll talk nothing but surf, but it won't be before the budget's passed. It's kind of complex. Alderman Schmidt?
It would help. I know, I heard the talk a couple of years ago, the surf talk. It made a lot of sense, and it matters. I only wanted to say that Monday night will probably be on television. People will not be able to call in, they will not be able to make comments.
Right.
But they can still watch it, and I think that's an important thing for people to
And they
think
can be
about.
there in person if they want
Right.
to.
Right, they can at least see it and hear it. which
Yes,
is-
I may have misspoke. I think they do have the online capability.
For TV.
A lot of times they record, but other times they have a studio right there in that high school, so I think they have the capability to go live. However, based on my experience in the last few years, it's probably not worth watching.
I thought it was must-see
In
TV.
fact,
drama.
the Corporation
gonna say,
Council,
those are the most
Corporation Council
tantalizing
reminded me
nights of-
that there's absolutely no requirement for us to have a public hearing on the budget, and I said, I'm not going there.
Transparency, it's important.
Yeah. Did you have something, Alderman Kelly?
I was trying to banter, but it's much harder when you're on Zoom.
Okay,
I was just saying, those are tantalizing evenings.
all right. I guess we'll say that's the end of general comment. Public comment, is there anyone on from the public that wishes to be heard?
Lori Ortolano, 41 Berkeley Street.
Yes, you have 3 minutes.
Okay, just a couple things. When Chief Carignan spoke about the drug issue, the influx of drugs, and the issues associated with them and the level of violence you see with these stimulant drugs, he did say that he wanted the alderman to keep in mind how we get ahead of this and how we deal with it. And I am wondering, how do we do that? And what's in the budget to do that? And what do they anticipate is actually coming to deal with that? Because I didn't really hear the details of how that is addressed. I do wish there was a Zoom capability for the budget hearing. I know you do it over at the school, but it'll really be interesting to see what the attendance is and the need to be in a place that large to address the hearing. Also, I've heard a lot of compliments tonight about the police department and the ranking it has nationally and at a state level. And I want us to bear in mind that the way we select those commissioners going through the governor's office is the way I believe it should be maintained. I'm very concerned that the closer you allow these appointments to take place, politics being what it is, and it's political at every level, but the more local you do it through an appointment process with the mayor and the aldermanic president, the more apt you are to have an influence there that I think would distort the objectivity of the department. And so I'm really, and I think if you really want to have that type of structure with your commissioners and people really believe that the mayor appointed or nominated positions that would come to the board is best done, I think the next best thing, not that is not a choice that I think is good. Go to elected positions where the public is voting, period. That's how they have real choice. So I'm really a strong supporter of keeping the commissioner seats and the appointments of those seats as they stand right now. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else from the public? I don't see anyone online, so remarks by Alderman? No, okay. We don't need a non-public. Alderman O'Brien, you're
Thank
up.
you, Mr. Chairman. I would like to make a motion to adjourn by roll call.
Please call the roll.
Alderman Schmidt,
Yes.
Alderman Jettie,
Yes.
Alderman Wilshire,
Yes.
Alderman O'Brien votes yes, Alderwoman Kelly.
Yes.
Alderman Dowd.
Yes.
Mr. Chairman, you have 6 yeas, 0 nays.
Motion carries, and we're adjourned at 8:34 PM. Thank you, everyone.
Good night.
Good night.
Good night, everybody.
Good night, Shoshanna.